All right, hello banjo players. Today we are talking about one of the most insidious mistakes I see creep its way into people's playing. That happens to players at all levels. If you don't fix this habit early on, it can really affect your playing long term. I'm talking about the hitch or the hesitation. So in this video, we're going to talk about what that is, where it comes from, and how to fix it. First thing I want to mention is that I do have a Patreon now. So if you want to support the channel for a few bucks a month, get lots of great extra exclusive banjo content, that's where it is. I'll put a link in the description. I've got a live stream coming up there. I'm doing regular live stream. We've got hours of content. It's definitely worth checking out. Hopefully I will see you over there. Okay, so what is the hitch? I'm going to play a little bit of Will the Circle Be Unbroken, sort of normal style without the hitch, and then I'll show you what it sounds like with the hitch. Okay, cool. You see that nice, smooth, fluid rhythm there. Now let's play it with the hitch. Okay, so that's a very exaggerated version, but the hitch basically happens when you're not sure where you're going, when you're not confident in yourself and you're prioritizing your note accuracy over your rhythm. You miss a note, okay, fine, you're not going to crash the song. You mess up the rhythm, you very well might, especially if you're playing with other people. If you hitch that rhythm, it's really hard to come back from that. So not having confidence in where you're striking, which string you're striking and your accuracy level there can cause this. I also see this happen with the left hand, especially if you're like switching chords. So if I go from like a G and then I'm about to hit the C and I'm kind of like having to think about it, that may very well be a place where I can hitch my rhythm as well, where I just sort of stop for a second and then hit that chord, a little late. All right, so that's the explanation. What is the hitch? Where does it come from? Now, how do we fix it? There are a bunch of steps you can take here that will really lessen this and make this much easier. I will say, I always talk about playing with a metronome, and if that hitch is really bad for you, that can be useful. I think, though, that especially for people that have been playing a while and you're more comfortable, you're probably kind of used to maybe making that little hitch and then speeding back up to catch up with the metronome. So if you aren't sort of hyper attuned to what's going on there, you may feel like you're playing with a metronome when you still got that hitch fairly badly. So my first tip to you is record yourself playing. You might not notice it in the heat of the moment when you're playing, but it'll be pretty obvious if this is an issue when you play the recording back. And if you detect this sort of rhythm wonkiness, there's a bunch of things you can do to help fix that. The first thing you can do is just slow down. You're probably playing a little too fast or a little faster than you are really comfortable with. Like I always say, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Really eliminate that hitch by slowing down and being really comfortable and deliberate with how you're hitting the notes. That will go a long way towards eliminating. A lot of times this hitch comes because you are playing faster than your brain can sort of calculate where your hands are going. So slow down, give your brain time to catch up. And once your brain gets used to that, you are going to be able to go faster. The next step is really eliminate the possibility of the hitch by thinking about your arm as a metronome. So look, I've got this metronome here, right? If it's going, that arm, steady, right? Nothing's going to stop it. It's not going to get confused. It's just going back and forth. And I really think of my right arm in that same way. So here's what I mean. When I'm playing my banjo, that arm is just going in and out. We've got that sort of pendulum metronome motion. That never changes. Doesn't matter what I'm playing. That motion, that hammer motion is the same. And that is so important. If you get used to that, you're going to eliminate most of the hitch right there, or even all of it. Just, it doesn't matter if you miss the note, hit the wrong string, whatever, your hand is still just going in and out at that steady rate. I'm really thinking about the contact of my forearm here with the edge of the banjo. And that is really sort of that fulcrum point we really use to keep that rhythm steady. Super important here. Practice that with a metronome, slow speed. That'll really help. Just like a little double thumbing pattern, just first, fifth string. So think about that motion of your arm. That will really help. And then as part of that, you're sort of mentally prioritizing the rhythm over the note accuracy, right? Now, you do want note accuracy, but the thing is, like, we're not going to slow down our rhythm in favor of note accuracy. If we find we're missing a lot of notes and that note accuracy is really suffering, well, then we're just going to slow down the whole thing, right? We're not going to sort of pause to make sure, like, oh, I'm hitting that third string. I'm not going to pause to make sure that I'm really positioned to hit that third string. If I miss, if I hit the second, hit a couple strings, whatever, the song continues, that motion continues. That note is over. We don't pause before it. We don't pause after. We just keep it moving. And that pendulum motion will help. Slowing down will help if your note accuracy is really suffering, but just make the conscious decision to prioritize your rhythm over your note accuracy. And then let's talk about switching chords. So we've got this little change from a G to a C, and will the circle be unbroken? It's something like if you're not really comfortable with fretting that C chord, you really want to work on getting those chord changes smooth. And basically the 1, 4, 5 chords in every tuning you like to use. So if you're in G tuning, really get comfortable just switching from G to C to D until that really becomes muscle memory. Another thing that is actually kind of useful sometimes is hammering on into the chords. So I can strum the open strings and then fret the whole chord at once. That gives me an extra half beat to sort of position my hands. I'm also thinking about, as I'm playing the song, can I kind of get my hand into position before the chord change actually happens? So this is especially useful if you're playing, say, an open G tuning and you're hanging out on that G chord. Well, if you're not really fretting anything, you can kind of get your fingers positioned pretty well above the frets, a couple beats beforehand, and that can be really useful as well. And the last thing, I always talk about this: simplify, simplify, simplify. If something is beyond your skill level right now, that is totally fine. If you're looking at someone else's tab, you're not super familiar with the song, you're not super, maybe it's using some advanced techniques, feel free to think about ways to simplify the tab. That will really go a long way. And look, as banjo teachers, sometimes we throw a lot of fancy tricks in there just because that can be fun for us. Songs can sound great, simple. I play lots of stuff very simply. Sometimes even the tab might be more complex than the version that I will typically just pick up my banjo and play. Don't fall into that trap of thinking you need to be a fancy player, because you don't, right? So simplify, work on that rhythm, those rhythm basics. That's really going to help you. All right. See you next week.